Joining us on segment 29 of the Instant Series preview and reaction is our good friend, managing editor of the Niners Wire, part of the USA Today SMG Group covering the San Francisco 49ers, is our good friend Kyle Madson. Kyle, good to see you, sir. How are things on your side of the country?
Good. Less wet than they were a couple weeks ago, which is great. It rained nonstop here for like a week and a half. And that doesn't happen. Like it rarely rains in California. So that was a little different to deal with. But spent some time in Orlando last week, and now I'm back and the sun's shining again. So all I had to do was leave, I guess.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, you guys can't really you guys really don't know how to live in, when it rains, even like a drop, right?
Dude, seriously, like, so we get rain every year, like a little bit here and there. And I mean, if you saw the drought conditions here, it's nuts. But we needed some rain, right?
Yeah.
And so when it was like, yeah, there's rain in the forecast the next couple of days, it's like great. But then it's like torrential downpour for days at a time. And yeah, I have like a sliding door at the side of my house that like rain's coming in, and I'm like, I didn't know I had to fix it, so we had to like fix that once it got dry, and we had flooding everywhere because places here just aren't built for that much rain. So luckily, like I said, it has subsided, and we're back to just normal California weather where it's like winter, but it's really not.
Yeah, you lucky SOBs out there, with the
Yeah.
exception of course, your occasional mudslide and 9 inches of rain in about 4 days. But Kyle, of course, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us, because of course, it is the upcoming NFC Championship featuring his San Francisco 49ers, see, I can't even speak, and my Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday. It's going to be an absolute blast. There's so much to break down here, so much to discuss really on both sides of it, but we're going to stick to, of course, the San Francisco 49ers side, because there's also some injuries here that we are hearing, a lot of injury things that I don't really think should be a big factor come Sunday afternoon, rather, but you never know. And I'm sure Kyle has all of those inside details. But Mike, let's get things started here. And Kyle, I think the big thing for starters is Brock Purdy, because all of a sudden this man is Mr. Irrelevant. Just, I don't know, less than about 11, no. Where's my math? 9 months ago, Mike? Is that right? 9 months ago, right? It was April.
So,
Yeah.
I was going to say, right? Yeah. And Mr. Irrelevant in the draft, and he played at Iowa State. He was not really supposed to be anything at all. Usually that's what happens with these Mr. Irrelevants. And all of a sudden, he is now leading the San Francisco 49ers to yet another NFC Championship game. And he's doing it because Jimmy G got hurt, Trey Lance got hurt, and now it's the next man up again. Kyle, this is some uncharted territory, and what is the reaction out there with Purdy just being this the guy right now?
It's wild, and it doesn't, like, I've stopped trying to make it logically make sense, because it doesn't. Like, any rookie playing as well as Brock Purdy has played is nuts.
Yeah.
But if Trevor Lawrence had come out and done exactly what Brock Purdy's doing, it would have been like, oh, nice little start for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's the last pick in the draft, and Mr. Irrelevant prior to this year had never thrown a pass in the NFL, and the fact that he comes in relief of Jimmy Garoppolo against a Dolphins team that at the time they came in week 13 was rolling, just lights him up. And okay, they weren't prepared for him. He had a couple of throws that weren't great, but made a couple of nice plays. But you figure, okay, the next week it's Tampa Bay and it's Todd Bowles, and they got a week to game plan for him, and he just lights him up. And it's like, okay, but the next week they got to go on the road, short week. He's hurt. They're playing in Seattle. Division's on the line. Here's the week where the other shoe drops. Struggles a little bit out of the gate, plays really well in the second half, and they win. Right. And it just doesn't. I don't have, like, he runs the system really well. He's incredibly smart, and he's not doing anything that different than Jimmy Garoppolo in terms of like the routes they throw. His passing chart, like his heat map, is almost identical. They're living in the same areas of the field, but he gets through his progressions, I think, a little bit quicker. He extends plays in ways that Jimmy Garoppolo could not. And it just opens up a couple of doors to their offense that just hadn't been there with Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. And you saw their offense over his time as the starter really take off.
67% completion rate, 8.1 yards per throw, 13 touchdowns, 4 picks, and a regular season passer rating of 107.3. In the postseason, 37 of 59, 62% completion rating, 9.3 yards per throw, 3 touchdowns, and a 109.9 passer rating. What a job he has done. And they played Seattle, and then last week, why am I drawing a blank here? Dallas, right? Thank you. Yeah, exactly. So against those two teams, and now you're going up against this Eagles team. This is a big deal. This is really a massive defense and possibly the best defense that he's faced his entire NFL career. And, a lot of people are kind of shying off of the Brock Purdy train. Some aren't, some are though. For you though, Kyle, this is some uncharted territory for him. And I don't think when the season started, he thought that he would be starting the NFC Championship game against the number 2 defense overall in the league.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, I talked earlier about like waiting for that other shoe to drop.
Right.
And I think you saw it a little bit against Dallas, where they got interior pressure. The receivers weren't creating separation, and you saw them have to hold the ball a little bit longer.
Yep.
And that's where you start to see kind of the physical limitations to his game kind of start to come out. Didn't throw a touchdown. He didn't throw a pick against Dallas, and he did enough to win, but it wasn't like, oh, wow, Brock Purdy looks great. He just kind of looked fine.
Right.
And that's my biggest concern going with the Niners going into Philly is, like, the interior of their defensive line is the best in the league, and it's better than Dallas's. And so any quarterback getting pressure in their face is going to struggle. Any quarterback with a run game that may not start off great like it did against Dallas is going to struggle in second and long, third and long. And that's for anybody. But when you get to the fact, like, was he underdrafted? Probably. Like, I think it's just pretty clear now that he's better than evaluators thought he was.
Right.
And one of his biggest strengths, I think, is that he knows what he's not good at. And we talked to his throwing coach on the radio show I produced, and he talked about Brock came in after or before the draft and basically said, here's all the things I need to get better at.
Yeah.
And worked really hard to get better at him. So I think he's a better quarterback now than he was during the pre-draft process. But there's still some physical limitations, and you see those. And a defense like Philly that is so good on the defensive line, and then you got James Bradbury and Darius Slay at the 2 corner spots. It's like, that's a defense I think that could make him look like the quarterback that we've kind of been waiting to see. Like, okay, at some point he's going to really struggle. And if any defense is going to do it, like, this is the one.
It's possible, very possible. But then again, there's so many weapons, though, that San Francisco has that could potentially, give Philly a run for its money. Mike, take it over.
Well, yeah. So just like Joey was talking about in terms of all the weapons, I'd love to go off of this. So even maybe this goes against his favor, but we heard this week that Kyle Shanahan was named as one of the finalists for NFL Coach of the Year, and of course that's more a focus toward them. But as much as I love being a Giants fan, Brian Daboll in there and everything, Kyle, do you really think? Is Shanahan, should he be the coach of the year? I was talking with these guys off air. I think too many times I think his accomplishments get pushed off to the side compared to the Dabolls, the Petersons, even others. There are a lot of good candidates this year. Should he be coach of the year?
No, I don't think so. And it's not to take anything away from him, right? What he did with 3 quarterbacks, specifically with a rookie, Mr. Irrelevant, and they start 3-4, and this only goes to the regular season. So they went 10 in a row to end the regular season.
Right.
I think when it was either 5-1 or 6-1 against playoff teams, they got better toward the end of the year. For me, like, he's in charge of personnel. So making the move for Christian McCaffrey and what Christian McCaffrey has done for their offense, to me, like, yeah, the resume is really good. But when you look at this award historically, the fact that Giants made the playoffs with whatever that roster is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I think that's a credit to Brian Daboll. And did they finish as strong? No. Like they went, what, 9-7-1?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So they go 9-7-1. I know they started 6-1, but the fact they started 6-1 and they were competitive and made the postseason and won a playoff game again. It's not a postseason award, but the fact that all of that with 49ers legend Richie James at wide receiver, like that's wild. So to me, like all credit to Doug Peterson and turning the Jags around in 1 year, and all credit to Kyle Shanahan for what he did. But I think when it comes down to it, I think Brian Daboll is going to win because what he did with that Giants team, a team that wasn't expected to really be any good, that was admirable.
Yeah, so there we go. I don't mind that. I don't mind seeing that. But going back more into the game itself, you talked about Purdy. Maybe that's where you see some of the weaknesses. Dallas was very rock fight kind of game, back and forth. I'm sure the defensive nerds really love that game. But is that really where that weakness is? Or I think the matchup that's always going to be talked about is the 49ers defensive line up against Philly's offensive line. Other than Purdy, is this really where the matchup's going to be? Is there a distinct edge, or is this just going to come down to scheme and in-game execution?
Yeah, I think in-game execution is going to be the big one, because the Niners defensive line is not just going to dominate. Like Philly's offensive line is too good. And frankly, that's kind of why I think the Eagles have such a big edge in this one, is because I think in the trenches, they're better on both sides of the ball. And that's not typically the case for the 49ers, but we've seen San Francisco just kind of get big and push teams around. So I think that might kind of be what they look to do here. I just have a really hard time. Like maybe it was good here. Maybe it was good that Dallas pushed them around a little bit, and you saw the Niners offense figure it out a little bit in the second half. I think they were like 4.4 yards of play in the first half, which would have been last in the league. But then they were like 5.5 in the second half, which is in the top 10. So they figured it out a little bit. And I think that might actually help them this week. They figured out how to work around a defensive line kind of eating against the interior. But I think it's going to have to be a lot of Shanahan if the Niners are going to move the ball. I think you're going to see a lot of screens, a lot of misdirection, a lot of using Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey just in ways we haven't really seen them used yet. And if you can get the Eagles to hesitate half a step, like that's huge, just because they are so good on that defensive line.
It's something also to Kyle that I think is definitely warranted of a conversation, just because of the fact that maybe it might just be, something to talk about within the media. But, we saw the injury report also, and Christian McCaffrey has a calf issue. And then Elijah Mitchell, if I'm not mistaken, I think he has a groin issue. I believe that was the official report. So, definitely something there on the running back side to keep an eye out for. And we know how good McCaffrey has been. He's looked like, from his Stanford days, he looks like he's finally back in that form. But again, we don't want to jinx anything, because one little hit to potentially the head, he could be out for the rest of his career. That's not even a joke. That's, dead serious because of what he's had to deal with in Carolina. But, is that something that the San Francisco media, including yourself and the rest of your crew, is something that maybe concerned about heading into Sunday? Or is that just, media fodder, if you will?
So it's not a concern. Like they're not going to play. I would be shocked if Elijah Mitchell and Christian McCaffrey don't play.
Right.
And McCaffrey even said today, there's a 0% chance that he doesn't play.
Right.
So a little double negative action there, but, dude, he said that, and I had to do math on it. Like I know it's 0% chance that he does not play. But yeah, so McCaffrey said he's going to play. Now, I don't know. I don't think the injury is bad enough that Like, he's going to be noticeably slower and noticeably less explosive.
Right.
The fact that they're not practicing to me is just precautionary by the Niners. Like, at this point of the year, Elijah Mitchell doesn't need to practice. Christian McCaffrey doesn't need to be in practice. So I think that's total maintenance on both of them. And it wouldn't shock me if on Friday's practice report, they're full participants and good to go.
You look at that, the interior of that offensive line, something that when we had you on back in August, Kyle, that was one of your concerns, was the team's offensive line. And you obviously have the 2 offensive tackles that are all pros. They're one of the 2 of the best in the league, but the 2 guards in the center is a little suspect. But again against this rotating of 8 for the Eagles defensive line, that they have basically 2 number 1 rotations, is scary. And again, that's not my bias. That's just the truth. If any football fan looks at it, hey, listen, I'm just
it's a good group, man. It's a really good group. It's very rare that the Niners have the worst defensive line in a game.
And it's weird when you have Robert Quinn as your number 2 right side defensive end, and then you have Hassan Reddick, who could go in and out, and it's wild stuff. But be that as it may, is that something of concern now that you see this defensive line going up against the Niners really for the first time this entire season, a defensive line like this against that I guess the suspect 3 in the middle?
Yeah, that's the offensively anyway. That's definitely the biggest concern.
Yeah.
I just, outside of trying to, I think, get horizontal and just run away from those guys, that didn't necessarily work against Dallas. In fact, what ended up working against Dallas was just kind of going right at them.
Right.
And just getting downhill and pulling tight ends and fullbacks and cracking receivers down. And that ended up working a little bit. But to me, I think you got to go short throws as extensions of the run game. Just get the ball out of Purdy's hands quick. See if you can, like I said, see if you can make Philly hesitate for half a step, even if that's with a jet motion fake, right, or counters, or just I think you're going to see like a Kyle Shanahan in his bag type of game where they're just trying anything, because I just don't think traditional outside zone is going to work, because I think Philly's going to live in the backfield a little bit. So that's definitely, when it comes to issues moving the ball, that's number 1. It's not even Slay and Bradbury. If that was the case, if it was just let's say the Eagles just had a generic offensive line, one of the middling offensive line or defensive line, I wouldn't have that many concerns, because Kyle Shanahan's going to scheme guys open. But it becomes a lot harder to scheme guys open when your quarterback has less than a second and a half to throw it.
Right.
And when you're living in 2nd and long and 3rd and long because you can't get the run game going. So I do think, like I said earlier, I think playing against Dallas last week and having Dallas kind of eat the way they did, and they have a good defensive line too. And Micah Parsons is one of the best in the league, and DeMarcus Lawrence is awesome. But I think that actually might help San Francisco a little bit in seeing how they can combat a defensive line that's hanging out in the backfield, because I think Philly's gonna probably do that.
We'll see. Mike, take it away.
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned a lot of the keys to the game in there, and sort of what the 49ers may need to do. A lot of the getting creative, I guess, really, to try and beat Philly. But ultimately, what do you think your prediction is going to be? Are the 49ers going to be able to come out with the win, or is it going to be the Eagles moving on?
No, I think the Eagles win. There's just too many things. If it was just their defensive line that the 49ers are going to struggle with, I'd feel a little bit better about it. But when you go to the other side of the ball and you look at what Jalen Hurts does, not only on the ground, but his ability to throw and complete deep throws. I think he was on throws 20 plus yards down the field. I think he was 39.7% this year, which is really good. You look at that number the same way you look at a 3-point percentage. Yep. If you see a guy cashing 39.7% of his threes, it's wow, don't let that guy shoot it. So, and the 49ers have really struggled defending the deep ball this year. So if Jalen Hurts is getting time to unload it to Devontae Smith or AJ Brown or whoever it is, I think the Niners are going to struggle there. They've taken Jimmy Ward, their free safety. They're very, very good free safety, made the NFL top 100 list as a free safety, and was one of the reasons that one of the things in 2019 when they made the Super Bowl, they were so good at not allowing big plays.
Yeah.
They were just dynamite at that all year up until Tyreek Hill in the Super Bowl, but different conversation. But they removed Jimmy Ward from that free safety spot because he was hurt. They signed Tayshaun Gibson the last week of the preseason. He comes in. He actually wins the starting free safety spot. And by the time Jimmy Ward was healthy, the Niners needed a nickel corner. So he can play that spot. He played corner when they first drafted him out of Northern Illinois as a safety. They put him at corner. And he's one of the best. He's their best cover man. And that's been the case for a while. So they dropped him into the slot and they kept Tayshaun Gibson at free safety. And that's worked pretty well. They have the number one defense, but they're susceptible to that deep throw because Tayshaun Gibson should probably be playing strong safety. He just doesn't have the range to get deep and to help Deommodore Lenoir or Trevarius Ward. So I could see the Niners just kind of putting a shell on the top and saying, here, Jalen Hurts, you're going to have to go 13, 14, 15 play drive. And maybe they can, but the Niners are going to take that and just kind of tip their cap and I think try and limit those big plays. But I don't have a ton of confidence that the Niners are going to be able to overcome all the things Philly's good at. The Niners are bad at. Like it's a really bad matchup for them. So I do think the Eagles win like 24-14 or something like that.
Wow. That big of wow. Okay. Now that actually leads to a perfect follow-up though, because from what, the conversations that Mike, myself, Ian, DeLuca have all had together was that, and again, that's despite them being Eagles haters and whatnot. And, just looking at it with a, non-biased head, I thought also, and I said this coming into this game too, is that, all right, now I'm looking at my fandom and saying, okay, this is, you take a step back and, you're not going to say, oh, they're going to, they're going to win. They're going to go to the Super Bowl, whatever. No, you look at the other side and you say to yourself, San Francisco, I believe, statistically also, is one of the most complete teams in the NFL, if not the complete team. Do you agree with that assessment that they are complete all around or no?
Yeah, I think so. But every team in the NFL is going to have weaknesses. Like there's a salary cap and you only have 53 guys. And it just so happens, like I said, that the two things Philly is really good at, the Niners just really struggle with. Yeah. So that's kind of where now I will say Jalen Hurts' shoulder is interesting here. And he's not been as prolific since he got hurt. And that could be because it was the Giants playing a bunch of backups in the final week of the season. And then last week, sorry, Mike, last week was just not a contest. And so it was just kind of, at least it was that and not like a heartbreaker, like,
Mike turned it off
by the end of the first quarter.
Yeah, I was say Mike turned it off then.
I was in Disney World with my family and we were out at dinner. I was like, okay, we can get back for the second half. And I looked at the score, like early second quarter. I was like, oh, like, all right, we're good to chill. Hey, we'll get another bottle of wine, please. No, dude, hey, real quick, when the Niners, and I'll get back to but when they were in the Super Bowl against the Ravens, they were just getting housed.
Yeah.
And the lights go down at the Superdome, and I'm sitting there talking to my dad. Dad's a big Raider fan. And I'm talking to my dad, and I'm like, you know what? I'll take it. Like, they didn't play their best game. They got blown out. Like, okay, that's fine. And I just accepted it. And then the lights come back on, and they get a touchdown, and then they get a fumble, and they score again, and then they get down to the 5 in the final seconds, and it's like, oh my God, they're going to do it. And then they lose. Like, that's a way worse way to go out. Like, no, I'd way rather take a walk. Anyways, Jalen Hurts. So that's one of my things with the Niners. Like, when they go RPO or they do a designed run, like a design zone read, I think you just have to hit Jalen Hurts and just try and make him uncomfortable. That's, I think, the only thing that's going to, I think, help the Niners defensively is if he is in some discomfort. And okay, maybe there's a couple of throws he can't make, and now defending the deep ball isn't as big of an issue. Like that's the kind of stuff I think that they're gonna have to do. Not anything crazy, nothing after the play, nothing. But when quarterback goes zone read, he's fair game, even if he hands it off. And I think they just have to do that as much as they can, because I don't know if they're gonna have a ton of chances to get hands on him.
And something else, too, obviously, on the Eagles side of things, their offensive line, as of right now, is intact. But again, we saw when Lane Johnson went down for those 2 games, the offensive line looked almost like the Giants' offensive line back a couple of years ago under
Ben McAdoo?
Ben McAdoo and Pat Shurmur. Things looked absolutely a disgrace. And it's, all joking aside, they were literally they were just attacking that right side, and they took out Gardner Minshew. It was not a good ththing. So also, if San Francisco could get him out with those torn abs that he's got, drugs are amazing. That I could tell you, because there's no doubt about it. Those long needles are definitely going into them. There's for sure. Again, this is not an official, whatever. But again, all joking aside, wink, wink. All you need to do is just attack that right side, and I can only assume that they're going to be going for that right side and going for Lane Johnson. But you saw what he did last week, almost 50%. He looked like he was his full self. But those abs, Mike, what did we say? What color would they be? Black once it's all said and done, right?
Yeah, something like that. Black, maybe a purple mixture in there.
Gross.
Oof.
Really, really disgusting.
Sounds brutal.
But hey, listen. If we'll see what happens, because it's gonna be tons of fun on Sunday. I think the Eagles are 2.5 favorites, says MGM, Caesars, all of the sports book. And Kyle, one last thing. That's something else that you said too, is that you said earlier, big advantage. Vegas disagrees with you. I don't think it's a big advantage, because
what is Vegas now?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's pretty much a toss-up, and then I guess home field, if you will. But speaking of home field, that some people didn't really like was the homeland, right? And I know that was your guy. What was his name? Oh, right. It started with a K and ended with a K. Cliff Kingsbury, right?
Oh
he decided to go to Thailand.
Yeah.
And he's not coming back. How much money would it take you to take out of your savings to keep him to stay in Thailand?
Nothing, because I want him to come back and make an NFL team worse. That's the worst offseason news for the entire NFC West was Cliff Kingsbury getting fired. Like, part of me was hoping that because the Cardinals just extended him, that their owner Michael Bidwell was going to be like, oh, well, we have to string it out a couple more years. And it was just with Kyler, and he has his torn ACL late in the year. Like, they're going to have to go into next year with Colt McCoy. And then I could see him talking themselves into another year because he didn't have Kyler. And it was just going to be, it was going to be great watching the Cardinals just hang out at the bottom of the division. But I mean, they might still do that. That organization is still kind of a dumpster fire. But yeah, I'm sad it's not going to be with Cliffy, my guy.
I mean, hey, listen, he's partying it up out there. It looks pretty good, but who knows? He might be there for another couple of years.
Thai food is delightful. So
yeah. Oh man, ladies and gentlemen, our good friend Kyle Madson, managing editor of the Niners Wire. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us as always, man. Truly appreciate it. I am so pumped to see this battle on Sunday, and yeah, should be tons of fun. Thank you so much, my man, for coming on.
Anytime, guys.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, alongside my good man Mike Szabo, Ian Schreier on assignment, and of course Kyle Madson, Joey Jarzynka saying so long. We will see you on another edition of the Instant Series coming up soon.